expenditure was the delivery of all of our N95 masks that were on an allotment basis. And this came from 3M Corporation. And I would remind you that no other county that we know of, and no other, certainly no other government entity in Georgia, had the ability to establish a strategic relationship with 3M that we worked through board contacts that we had from previous lives that got us into this position. And our purchasing group did a phenomenal job working with them to align these allotments and then close this out before the end of 2020. And that, again, benefited Fulton County internal operations and your municipalities in what was an item that was widely sought after, and of course very critical to protection of frontline workers from exposure to the virus. I think, Mr. Chairman, that would be a good summary, and then we would be glad to take any questions. I know there may be some questions about vaccine preparation, and Matt Kallmeyer is on the call and can speak to that if there are some questions, but it's very early in the planning for that at this point.
Okay, are there questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a question, Vince Williams.
Mayor Williams?
Yes, I'd like to ask, is there any plan? We know that this horrible disease isn't getting any better. We do know that there's a vaccine plan in place, but as far as the county, what are we looking at doing to prepare for at least for the next 4 to 6 months to make sure that our county is continuing to move forward with keeping its citizens safe?
So let's break that answer into two pieces, Mayor Williams, and thanks for your question. As I mentioned, we would be seeking from our Board of Commissioners a reserve fund in the 2021 budget that, absent any federal support, we will have the ability to continue effectively testing at the level that we're doing today, as well as the provision of personal protective equipment and the types of cleaning of our basic facilities that occur. So we would anticipate continuing doing that. Secondly is this preparation for the distribution of a vaccine. And I'm going to ask Matt Kallmeyer to give the group an update on that planning. Matt, if you'll do that, and anything else, Matt, that I've left out.
We can't hear you, Matt.
Matt, you're muted, Matt. There you go.
Is this any better? Thank you.
Yeah.
The vaccine preparation is still in the early stages, Mr. Williams, Mayor Williams, and we have heard a lot via media as well as from our partners in the CDC and the state that we would like to include our public safety individuals in the tier 1B category. So we have been working with the Board of Health as well as the liaisons from each of your community to make sure that we can capture those numbers. It comes up to about 11,000 public safety individuals that we're requesting the vaccination for. We don't know which of the vaccines we'll get. We do know based upon the recommendation that was submitted by the CDC to the Secretary of Health and Human Services that the tier group 1A will be healthcare providers, which I could get behind in that concept as well, because those individuals are exposed to it for extended periods of time. So those would be people working in the CCUs, the ICUs, the hospitals, emergency rooms, so on and so forth, as well as the long-term acute care facilities, where our Board of Health has been seeing some increases in the amount of transmission of COVID cases. So one yesterday that they shared with us, 40 patients were COVID positive, 20-something staff members were COVID positive as well. So it's spread fairly quickly within that long-term acute care facility. So 1A would be that group, 1B would be the next group. We have procured ultra cold, low temperature freezers to make sure that we're ready for the vaccine if we do get that one. If not, we also have other capabilities for maintaining the cold storage and the cold chain for the other vaccines that would be coming down shortly thereafter. Just to go ahead and try to give everyone a little bit of managing expectations, we're told that if every day if they manufacture 1 million vaccines, the state of Georgia would only get about 30,000 allocated to the whole state. From there, of course, the Department of Public Health would work on the distribution and control that, and it would go to the hospitals, of course, for their immediate distribution to their physicians, nursing staff, and such. So Not a large portion that's coming to us initially. We're hoping next week or the week thereafter, we'll get the first allocations coming in. And then from there, we're working on a mass vaccination plan that would include all the municipalities and working with your public safety liaisons of how that would occur. So a couple different long answer. First, looking at our public safety partners, then looking at how do we go ahead and do a max vaccination program, coupling that with the pharmacies that are doing it, as well as the physician's offices and such, to make sure that every citizen doesn't have a barrier to receive a vaccine should they want one.
And Matt, certainly thank you for that. But also, I'd like to know from you, I do know we're getting small allocations, but I would like to see included in our distribution of vaccines because we had a huge impact in our nursing homes and private long-term care facilities, that we certainly keep those members of our society in the mix of what we need to do for protection. And I don't know if the county has thought about that.
No, Mr. Mayor, if you have a particular one, please pass the point of contact on to me. We have been working diligently with the Healthcare Coalition for the area, and a lot of these long-term acute care facilities and nursing homes are represented. Sometimes there are some that are not represented. If I'd love to verify, all the long-term acute care facilities and nursing homes were given the opportunity to submit their requests, the amount of individuals at their location that would need a vaccine, and join into the CVS Walgreens plan where they would do the administration on their behalf. So CVS, for example, is working up the plan to be able to allow those individuals to do a drive-through process at their different designated sites, and then also bringing the vaccine to the facility. So please allow me to have the opportunity to work with whatever particular one that you're referencing to make sure that they are prepared for that, sir.
And I'm not just singling out just what's in Union City. I have been watching the news, as many of us have, over these past few months, where we've had grave instances where we lost people, numbers of people in long-term care facilities and senior facilities around the Metro Atlanta area. So this is vitally important that we make sure we provide this level of support to those communities. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions about COVID-19 update?
Yes, this is Mayor Holiday Ingram. Good morning, everyone. And I apologize for my tardiness. I'm not sure if I missed it. Has there been a discussion on the actual spending of CARES Act funding and where the county is with spending, as well as if there is still room and the funds haven't been spent? The discussion around additional allocations. I heard from my city manager that there's been some communication that he received regarding that. The time frame for spending that is absolutely unreasonably short. He indicated it was December the 11th. I do recall from the initial MOU a date of December 21st. So again, if I missed that discussion, I apologize for that, and I can get it offline. But if not, I'm definitely interested in hearing where the county is with spending of the COVID-19 CARES Act funding, as well as the time frame in which we have to spend the funding that is initially allocated to us, and whether there will be additional allocations, what those will be, and the maximum amount of time allotted to cities to make sure that we're able to stand up and spend the money in the best way that will meet the needs and bridge the gaps for our residents.
All right. Mayor, the CFO is ready to respond. Ms. Whitmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through November 27th, the county has spent $82.4 million of the $104.5 million that's been allocated. The time frame for municipalities to submit their documentation to support the municipal reimbursements is actually it's December 15th for the incurred through date. So expenses incurred through December 15th. And then all of the supporting documentation should be submitted by December 21st. That's what is noted in the MOUs that were circulated and signed by each municipality.
And I recall that 21st date as well. So I'm not sure what information my city manager received Again, he indicated that there was some communication regarding additional funding being provided to the cities. We started having a conversation around what that might be, and that if that happens, that it would have to be spent by December the 11th. December the 11th is actually a week from today.
Mr. Manager?
No, ma'am, I'm not sure what your city manager is referring to. There's no additional allocation plan.
So let's talk about the 82.4 million out of the 104 million that the county has spent, which means that that is about what, 22 million dollars that the county has not spent. What is the plan for that? And within that, is there room for additional allocation to cities?
No, ma'am. All of those remaining funds are allocated against existing POs or will be attributed to our public safety costs, much like the cities have done.
Right. And so, you know, I'm extremely hopeful as we get new administration in that there will be funding directly to cities. So we're not having to deal with what we've gone through before with the county. You know, to say right now that there's still $26 million available and we're less than 30 days and there's no willingness to provide additional information. And what I'll do is actually mute myself and have my city manager send me or give me more information around the communication. But, you know, I am getting more and more concerned as COVID-19 continues to wreak havoc throughout this country and definitely throughout our cities around our ability to be able to make sure that if additional funding is allocated, that we're able to receive it immediately and not have to go through the long negotiated and back and forth process that we've already gone through with the cities. With the county. Cities are essential and we need direct funding. And so I'm gonna just hope and pray on that. But like I said, when I go on mute, I'll check with my city manager. But again, I'm really disheartened by the tone of the responses regarding additional needs, because we all know that the eviction crisis is looming and that I have residents, I'll speak for East Point, that we've referred to agencies that have received funding from the county to only be told, one, that they don't have the funding or that it's allocated for the city of Atlanta. And so I am desperately looking for resources. And again, I thank the county for the $252,000 in grants for homelessness, to prevent homelessness, that we might be able to use to go towards this. But the needs of our residents continue to grow each and every day. And our ability to bridge those gaps for them, unfortunately, is contingent upon, you know, whether or not the county is going to, you know, provide this level of support. So thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Just a minute, Mr. Mayor Bodie, and then the county attorney wants to respond as well.
Yes. Just to address the December 11th date, that's the submission date for the additional COVID through Cdbg money. I think it may have totaled 1.7 million. You know, we went through one round of it and this is the second round of it. So those are due on December the 11th. And everybody, I'm sure, as Palmetto did, has got copies of that for submission. So that's all I know about it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
One question to piggyback a little bit on what Mayor Holliday was talking about. Initially, there was some conversation about people who are getting monies from Atlanta and the cities. And there was supposed to be some conversation about that. Where are we on that?
Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir, I can address that. I did have several conversations with my counterpart at the city of Atlanta relative to the request for reimbursement. They did respond with support for the overall testing program. I think the number was 7.9 million that they contributed to that. They did not agree to reimburse us for activities of nonprofits. We did, in fact, send a letter that the county attorney helped me create to them, and we have received their response to decline for any further reimbursement.
Well, thank you for telling us that. I was waiting for that response and I'd never seen anything writing or otherwise. Lastly, If there, if when there a relief comes again, do you feel that the municipalities will be in a position to be directly funded?
We are working with some lobbyists to try to make certain that funding goes to municipalities and this county, because of the fact that the state of Georgia did not fulfill its obligation to fund municipalities, and monies were not given to the county to do so. So as Mayor Holiday Ingram indicated her frustration, we too are frustrated in the process and don't want to be viewed as a source of revenue for municipalities. Hopefully the new legislation coming through, we're monitoring closely, will have the direct monies going to the municipalities, or clarify even more clearly that the state is being given money to disseminate to municipalities. But there was no such provision for counties in this particular round, and we are hoping that the issue is clarified next go round.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate that.
Mayor Edwards, I can tell you that that is the ask for this new administration, but even the federal leaders that are working towards a next round of funding is specifically that all cities will get direct funding, rather than having these types of instances arise where no city has received funding, and we have the issue that we have relying on the graciousness of a county or a state to be able to support what we need to do in our community. So certainly we'll be pushing, and us as mayors, it is going to be our job to continue pushing our federal leaders to make sure that happens.
Absolutely.
Right. Any other questions or comments on the COVID-19 update? If not, we'll go to item number 2, the T-SPLOST schedule update. Mr. Manager, you want to?
Yes, sir. We do have a T-SPLOST schedule update, because I think that was the only thing that was requested. Let me ask if we can bring that chart up. I'm not sure that the technology is going to allow us to do that, but if not, David Clark, are you on?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I am on.
You want David to step through this agenda, or you want to make any comments up front? Oh, sorry.
The only upfront comment I'll make is that it's our understanding that the mayors are not prepared today for an in-depth conversation about the ultimate direction on T-SPLOST, but would like to review the dates for the referendum schedule. So David and his team have pulled that together, and I'll turn it over to him now to walk us through that.
Thank you, Anna. And again, you're absolutely right. We're not here to talk about specific projects or even the structure of the next T-SPLOST, but I just wanted to hit some highlights so we can start keeping some things in our radar for 2021. Just to review, the current T-SPLOST 2017 program continues through its collections through March 31st of 2022. And just as an aside, our collections for October of this year was 9.5 million overall for the county outside of the city of Atlanta area, which represents the third highest collection month that we've had since the start of the program. Only December of 2019 and 2018 were months that were higher. So obviously, even with COVID, our collections have thankfully stayed up. We're on track to have about 90% of the total program collected over the 5-year program. So that means each city should be able to have enough funds to complete their tier 1 projects and maybe even dabble a little bit into tier 2. But as we start thinking about T-SPLOST 2022, the earliest we can have that referendum now is November 2nd, 2021, which, even though it sounds like a long way away, when you start looking at the specific things that have to happen for us to be on that referendum date, we have to first do the final estimates of what we think the program for the next 5 years will bring in. We think we'll have that information in February of 2021. Once that number has been finalized, the cities in February and March can start developing their possible T-SPLOST projects to be listed in the future referendum. And I've already started that conversation with each of your public works directors this past month, and all of them are beginning to put together their project lists. As in the past, there is a requirement to have some public outreach by each city, so you can meet with your citizens to talk about these projects and get the right ones on the referendum. In June of 2021, we'll be able to finalize the project listing for each city. And if you remember, there's 2 requirements that are necessary before we get on the referendum. The first would happen in July of 2021, and that's the approval of the city mayors of the final T-SPLOST list for the county-wide referendum, with the exception of the city of Atlanta. And if you remember, we need 85% by population of the cities to agree on that project list. And that vote has to happen at least 30 days before the BOC ratification happens. So if we do that in the early part of July, that allows the BOC to ratify the referendum in early August. It would have to be about August 2nd or so of 2021, because the state law does require that ratification to happen 90 days before the vote. So as you can see, even though the vote is going to be about 11 months from now, we really have to start developing that project list shortly after the first of the year, if not already. So there you are, Mr. Manager. If there's any other questions, I'll be happy to address them.
No, David, thank you very much. And Hannah, thank you. As I think all the mayors know, we continue to work with MARTA, and I believe there's a call after this one on design elements of South Fulton Parkway, BRT, as well as potentially addressing Roosevelt Highway. So that work does continue. We continue also to refine and seek city input on all the elements of along Georgia 400. I do think it's going to become interesting from a couple of perspectives. One is this timeline. In other words, we know that we as a collective group have struggled to come to a point of view on exactly how to address transit and or either with a separate referendum or inside of the T-SPLOST or not at all. And I think the second complicating factor is obviously the COVID-19 impacts on the economy, traffic patterns, and not to mention Gwinnett's failure to get a transit vote across the goal line. So it's not a insignificant political and intellectual exercise to go through. So I do think laying this timeline out is good, because it's almost a forcing mechanism for this group to come to a conclusion. So it's going to come to a conclusion on its own without some decisions being made.
Are there questions or comments? Any questions or comments? If not, we'll go to the next item, number 3, which will be animal control contract services.
So, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Before we leave this particular topic, I don't really have any sort of specific questions, but just, on this, I guess, given the timeline that was just laid out, I think we do need collectively to have sort of a planned approach about how we want to go about getting to a decisional process. So read that right. You took the timeline down, but it looks like we need to have, public action starting in what, March? Is that what that said?
Can we get the timeline back up?
Yes, David, or there we go.
Continue, Commissioner Ellis.
Yeah, so we need to have a project list identified by February. Is that what that is stating, or a possible list?
Yes, sir, or by the end of March, for sure.
Okay. Which would imply that we needed to have some sort of general decision about whether or not the group even wanted to move forward with the concept.
I think at 2 levels. Number one, the group needs to decide if they want to move forward with T-SPLOST and renew it. Number 2, if they want to include the funding of the transit capital that we talked about for 400 and South Fulton Parkway, that would need to be included in the project list. And again, both of those things would have to be decided concurrently in order to have a complete list by March 2021.
Okay. Well, just throw it out for consideration, but looking at this timeline, it appears to me that, you know, this should be sort of a central topic for our meetings for the foreseeable future until we have some sort of consensus to give the cities the ability to move forward in that planning period for February and March and into April and May.
Mayors, commissioners, any?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Not to let the cat out of the bag, but MARTA will continue starting tomorrow to come to Palmetto, Georgia. We, as everyone probably knows, they cut the routes off down there to us 9 months ago. So we've not seen a MARTA bus in a while. And I can guarantee you the city of Palmetto does wish to go forward with the T-Splosh, but we have no intention of supporting any of that money for MARTA or any of its expansions. They choose to ignore us. Palmetto chooses to ignore them. And with that, I'll be quiet.
All right, other thoughts or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say in the conversations leading up to this meeting, we did talk about the fact that we weren't ready to have that conversation yet, but we will have some interim meetings in December. And to the point that was made earlier, this should be the #1 topic in the January meeting.
Absolutely. Anyone else? All right, no further comments at this time. Number 3, the animal control contractor services. Madam CO, is it?
We didn't have any specific questions of the mayors on what they wanted to discuss surrounding the animal control contract, but I'm available. Matt Kallmeyer is also available. His department is responsible for administering the program. So we are, Mr. Chairman, ready to accept questions from the mayors.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Anna, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me just say this. As for the city of South Fulton, and I speak for a lot of other cities, we're paying an excruciating amount of money for animal control. And one of the things that been consistent, even when I was a commissioner, that we have not been able to overcome is this call-in system that costs us money. We all know as citizens that we call in for on a dog maybe 5 or 10 times, and we've been charged for every call that we have. We have not yet seemed to be able to get our arms around what's the best system that we can do to save money in the municipalities.
Well, I mean, I guess I can try to respond to that at 2 levels. One is that's the cost allocation methodology that we all agreed to in the contract. So the costs are the cost, and that's the allocation methodology is the number of calls.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this before you go any further. You know, what other options do we have?
Right.
Well, you have the clear option to opt out. That's the most
fundamental.
fundamental.
What viable option do we have? I know that Palmetto, Mayor Bodie has gotten to the point where he don't make the calls go out like that. He sends his police officers out to investigate it first. And I think that's helped him a little bit. But I mean, I hear what you're saying, and you're saying the best way is to opt out. Then we'll have dogs running all over everywhere, and dogs don't know about boundaries. They'll be in Atlanta and Fulton County also.
Well, and I think the second thing to make sure that you consider is the county is passing or will pass a bond issue that is going to be funding a world-class animal shelter on Fulton Industrial to the tune of 35 million, Anna, or 35 million dollars, which is not included in this cost structure. So if we were to fully burden this cost structure, it would be even more. So there is even though it's not our technical responsibility to have that level of service, we are doing that. So it is a shared responsibility with shared cost, with a cost allocation methodology that we've all agreed to. But you still have the option to opt out and do it yourself.
I understand that, Mr. Manager, but and I appreciate you building the facility, but dogs don't come by the facility and register to go in. You know, they're just everywhere. And I understand that your only obligation is for rabies. I understand that also. But here's where we are today. And we're asking, is there anything that we can look at to ease the burden of the cost in terms of animal control for our cities?
So I'll follow up on that because the cavalier sharing of an opt-out option today is not what was shared with us when the contract was presented. I mean, there was a full-blown presentation and assurances that the services and the rendering of services that we were receiving would be better and would take into consideration all of the concerns that we shared previously. So the cavalier sharing of we could have just opted out was clearly not what was on the table at the time in the final hour that we were asked to actually go back into this contract once again. And while in good faith we did, with the assurances that it would be better, to now have today at this meeting share, well, you could have just opted out. I mean, that's a slap in the face. So I would like to know, as it relates to the performance of this contract, how are you even monitoring the performance of this contract? How are you, as a county, monitoring whether or not there was an improvement in the services delivered that actually took into consideration the concerns that were shared? And because of this cavalier opt-out option being explained, I need to know when the contract expires so that we can really maximize our time frame before that decision comes up and is presented again to us at the final hour to have to make the decision, so that if we decide that we do want to opt out, we opt out.
Okay, we'll ask Matt Kallmeyer to do that. And by the way, cavalier is your term. It's a business decision to either opt in or opt out. Matt, if you'll go ahead and describe what the process is to monitor the contract that we have with Lifeline.
Yes, sir. Back when we went ahead and presented the new 5-year contract term IGA through the cities, if everyone would remember, we brought a couple options to the table, a good, better, best type of a thing. And regretfully, at the time when the cost was shared of what we would consider best in class, there was not the resounding sound of any individual that wanted to go to that level of financial burden. So it was determined that we would continue the level of service that we had previous to that. And it had 3 different categories. So there's 8 different total categories of calls. And they're broken into 3 categories with different response times. We went ahead and we actually implemented, if I could for 1 second describe the categories, ones that are dog bites or animal attacks, 45-minute response time. Injured animals would be a 45-minute response time, and public safety emergency calls or law enforcement or fire request assistance would be a 45-minute response time. From there, it does go into a 4-hour response time for quarantine violations and cruelty to animals, and then a 24-hour response time for animals that are in custody, loose animals, and animal welfare checks. We actually go and one of the things that we did at the start of this new contract period is the county did bear the cost, and we took it away from Lifeline, the call management process, and we put it in the 911 center. We did that to professionalize the service, to make sure that there was never a situation where we heard before where individuals were not reaching someone. So now we are getting call takers that are answering the call, processing it, dispatching it through the 911 process, and we're able to get analytics to be able to see where we are and how things are doing and be able to see if our vendor is actually meeting the timelines. Mayor Bodie did go ahead and take on a different approach where he would like to triage the calls. And we work very closely with the police department and his police chief, where they go out, make a first, I guess you could say, look to see if they can locate an animal. If they do, they go ahead and then call our officers, and we will come down and actually retrieve that animal. The thing that is important to know is that, yes, we do go ahead and base it upon the call responses. However, if there is multiple animals, which tends to happen sometimes in the city of South Fulton on a call, we don't charge per animal. It's charged based upon that one call type. So when you have 30 animals, or sometimes in the city of South Fulton, we had well over 100 dogs that was inside a hoarding situation, that was not a cost for 100 animals. It was a cost for one particular call. So we try to keep it as fair and equitable as we can across the board. We know that sometimes there'll be situations where we find in Sandy Springs, we had a situation where we had, I forget the exact number, but well over 30 cats inside a residence with many animals that were being, had cruelty situation. Once again, that was just a one charge for that particular call. So some cities did have their own service, and we backed them up also nights and weekends. So College Park does have their own animal control officer, but we back them up on nights and weekends and when that individual does call out sick. So a couple different things we can do. I know at the time when we presented it, a couple of the cities went ahead and were asked to retain the right to be able to have an a la carte process to be able to enhance services. The city of Atlanta was one of those individuals, as well as Roswell. More than happy to go ahead and entertain that if there was a desire to increase response times or have dedicated resources in a particular municipality. We'd be more than happy to go ahead and discuss that as well.
Matthew, I do understand that hoarding of animals is one call. I mean, that's just logical to me. But what I'm saying to you is one animal who goes from one subdivision to another subdivision as we continue to promote density, those are calls who coming in one at a time on the same animal. So I want to make that clear.
Yes, Mr. Edwards. Mayor Edwards, one of the things that I try to explain is if in a typical 911 response, if someone's on an interstate and does pick up the phone and call in an accident, most of the time they describe the accident a little differently and the location of the accident differently. And the 911 provider is actually, or 911 dispatch is actually logging those and having to send an officer out or a fire crew to go ahead and clear those individual ones to make sure it is one and the same. We try to do the same thing as well. Sometimes we are not as lucky. People will describe the animal differently. It'll be a couple hours later, but we do everything we can to try to go ahead and not have duplicate charges or duplicate calls for service, sir. So we are doing that. We can continue to refine that. We'll do everything we can. We share the billing. It's a thing that's transparent. In the past, especially when you were a commissioner, sir, they did not do that. It was based upon last year's services. So the program before, when I took it over, they would bill everyone based upon the year's the service for the prior year. We do real-time billing, so we look at the last 3 months and we look at all the calls. We share that. I know City of Alpharetta takes that and actually uses with their GIS team and maps it and makes sure that every one of those calls are actually in their jurisdiction. Sometimes we have just a friendly review of it to see, and they will dispute a call saying, nah, I don't believe that's in our jurisdiction. We'll go ahead and do a deeper dive on that and we'll find the jurisdiction that it does belong to, because sometimes their border does blend with Johns Creek at times. So trying to be as transparent and open as possible.
But you do attest that what I'm speaking to you about does happen, right?
I believe it happens in all 911 calls, sir. I mean, regretfully, animal does not stay in one particular area, just like people see an accident on the interstate. From my public safety days working the streets, I can't tell you how many times we would have to go ahead and clear calls for the same accident, but it could be within a 5-mile stretch on the interstate described about 10 different ways. So it is always a challenge of public safety, and we're trying to do what we can to make it as clean as possible. I'd love to work with your administration if there is specific concerns, Mayor Edwards, and we want to make it this a program that you all could be happy about, and something that I take near and dear to heart.
I'm going to assume what you just said means yes. And if that's the case, that's the issue that I'm working on, that we need to work on collectively. So thank you very much.
Matt?
Yes, Mr. Mayor Edwards. Yes, Mayor Bodie.
Yeah, but following up on what Bill had just covered, and as everyone may or may not be familiar, you know, we've wrestled with this animal control from day one with Fulton County over and over again. And not to say that we've got it down pat, but until there's some control over the dispatching of those units to any municipality. I mean, right now, a perfect example is like McDonald's. And let's say that they're the only caller, but you know, they call on a dog, 40 minutes later, we're down there and the dog's gone. Well, you know, when I get these bills from y'all based on that prior 3 months, you know, I can look at the address and see how many times they've been to something. And some of these are, you know, 2 or 3 calls a day, or, you know, 10 calls within 3 days. But as Bill pointed out, you know, we do control that. Now, if a citizen picks up and calls for animal control, they dispatch an officer out. If the officer sees that dog, they advise them to send a unit. If he's gone, they cancel him. The police department canceled it. But as long as a citizen can pick up their phone and dial in to animal control and send that truck down, even to their neighborhood, different neighbors calling on the same dog, I mean, it's never going to be controlled. And one thing that's really unique about this, of course, I realize the cost of animal control is what it is. You know, there's a budget, there's an amount, and it costs, and it's divided up between all of us based on number of calls. Well, every time we kill a call or we cut back a call, guess whose cost of that call goes up? Y'all's do. I mean, even on cutting back on ours, the number of calls went down, but the cost per visit, you know, out, and I think it's around $420. I don't have it in front of me, but every time you save a call, you know, that don't change the bottom line on how much it costs. So they just divide it up a different way. And that is what it is. But until you control, you know, how many people can call up and ask for that truck down there to your municipality, you're not going to be able to cut the cost of it at all.
So just for the last, for April, May, and June, as Mayor Bodie was referencing, the city of Palmetto, for example, their bill was $8,500. So it was $900 for the month of April, $5,500 for the month of May, and $2,100 for the month of June. So I apologize, I read the wrong number. That was invoice total for those particular time period. The city of South Fulton tends to be the second largest user of the system. And for the month of April, it was $72,000, $73,000 for May, and $79,000 for the month of June, which did put them about $225,000 for that particular quarter for the program. The largest consumer is the city of Atlanta, and during that same time period, there were $612,000 of what they shared the brunt of the program.
Breaking that down, Matt, what's the cost of a call, a single call? Do it for Palmetto. It'd be the same for everybody, but just do the math on that.
I don't have that right in front of me. I'll be more than happy to do that for you, Mr. Mayor, and share that with the group.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I figured it out, the last bill I got, it was, I think, $420. So I'll be quiet.
And, you know, and also, folks, when the animal does come into the shelter, that cost does go ahead and cover the animal care in the shelter as well. So the easiest way we came up with is sharing it as well. Instead of billing for the dog that's at the shelter, as well as the call to the field, we just went ahead and made it as simple as possible, is that the cost for the call of service would include all costs for the program. So that includes the care that gets, the veterinary care, the vaccinations that has to receive, the food, so on and so forth. So if we're always looking for better ways to do this, but we thought that was the most fair and equitable way to go ahead and distribute the cost load.
All right, anyone else? Anyone else on animal control? Thank you. All right,
Mayor Edwards, I would love to work with your team, sir. If there's someone in particular, please pass them on to me through Dolores, and we'll make sure that happens, sir.
Love to have you, Matthew.
All right, number 4. What is the future of Cdbg in Fulton County? Madam CO, is that?
So yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the future of Cdbg is bright. The county has applied to be certified as an entitlement for the upcoming years. And so we are continuing the program. As you know, mayors, there's not 100% of our cities that participate as a part of the Fulton County Collaborative. Some cities have opted out, others have their own entitlement status. And so from Fulton County's standpoint, we plan to continue our program. We're proud to participate in that program because it enabled us in 2020, this most difficult year, to receive additional HUD funds related to COVID as well. So the program is continuing. We are an entitlement based on our population of participating collaborative municipalities. And we plan to continue the program as it has been for the last several years. If you have any specific questions, I can answer them directly, or I will ask for Deputy COO Pamela Rochelle's assistance with any details that I can't address.
Any questions?
Good news. That's just good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, number 5, cooperation and coordination with Fulton County, a conversation. What's that mean?
I have to ask Mayor Reed.
Mayor Reed, where are you?
That was something that came out just in our conversation, something that Vince Williams actually was pushing on. You know, the reality is we've got these kind of technical issues that we talk about, some of which are contentious, and that's a thing. We have regular meetings on subjects that we're working on, T-SPLOS schedules and things like that. And then, you know, there's, I don't know, my read of the T-SPLOS thing, for example, is that there wasn't enough communication at the front. The county probably was the right agency to do most of the work that the county did. And the cities would have probably felt more comfortable about it had there been some more communication, just as you guys were going through the process of allocating the money and all of that. And some of the issues around Atlanta might have come up, for example. And the idea was just to have a conversation about how we do better about those things going forward. And, you know, I will own the irony that the little group that tried to put this agenda together had a hard time with the technical details of getting it to whoever it was that was supposed to post it. And sorry about that. But, you know, just the idea that there is an opportunity to have a conversation more regularly around issues before they become problems. And how do we do that?
Okay. Any thoughts?
Vince, I'm expecting you to pipe up here.
Yeah, I thought he was.
Well, let me go ahead and pipe up because certainly that was a concern of mine, and it got a little altered in the transcription, but certainly we are doing exactly what I think we need to do, and that is having these discussions. But I got a little concerned on yesterday when the information wasn't shared early enough, even with some of our commissioners, because we had a commissioner that was moving towards cancellation because he hadn't received the information. So, you know, that's part of conversation. We got to make sure that we are sharing information, and, you know, and that's on everybody, you know, the mayors and the commissioners and all of our staff, to make sure that we're making sure that we continue these positive conversations, however hard they may be, but we've got to continue to stay in the posture of working together. We cannot have, you know, a meeting that falls apart because somebody feels that they've been slighted or is disingenuous. And we've got to tone our temperaments as leaders to be able to care for the people that we serve, because we all serve the same people. So my whole posture in this is making sure that the coordination of conversation, but also cooperation, is going to continue to be positive, you know, and positive doesn't mean that we're not going to have disagreements. That's human nature. But we've got to always remember, we've got to be respectful, because once we finish with the conversation, we can walk away from the room still being cordial to one another and being friends, because I consider you all family and friends. So that was my posture and my reasoning for the question, because we've got to make sure that we continue these types of discussions, because we're serving the entire county, because this county is made up of all of these cities. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Mayor, I will say a couple of words. Thank you. I do agree with what you're saying. Obviously, there's been some contention this year. It's been a rough year. And from what I've seen, from my standpoint, I think a big problem is the county probably unknowingly takes a position and a stance of speaking to the cities from a pedestal type of a standpoint, speaking down to the cities, whereas I honestly believe that part of our mandate is to work in conjunction with the cities, and in some instances, even follow the city's lead. At the end of the day, all of this is about who has the direct pulse of the people, which we all serve. And from a pulse standpoint, our mayors and council members have a better bead on that pulse than our county commissioners, in all honesty, because I've been both. And I've talked over the last 6 months about the county establishing some type of a municipal affairs department or director position to address the concerns of these 15 cities and to show our concern. Obviously, anyone that's ever been in government knows that the one way to show where your true priorities are within your budget. We are in the middle of our budgetary process. I have suggested establishing some type of a position along those lines, be it within external affairs or reporting to the 7 commissioners directly. But I think we owe it to a county that's 99.5% municipalized to assign some type of specific staffing to address the concerns of these major cities, mayors, council members, directly on a day-to-day basis. And that's something that I continue to push for. I'm going to bring it up at the next commissioners meeting, and I'm hoping to get some support from some of our commissioners to do something along those lines. I remember in College Park, I pushed for years for an airport affairs director, and we would pretty much get a legal shellacking from the city of Atlanta year after year when it came to contentious airport litigation. And the council finally saw that we probably needed that position, and we established it and have done a whole lot better with our affairs and relationships with the city of Atlanta, for example. I think this is something that would help the county repair the relationships with all of our city mayors and just our general standing in terms of relationship. There's no who's on top kind of a thing with something like this. It's a collaboration. And I don't know if we see it as a county, even in this meeting, that, there is tension, and there needs to be, some type of a way we can put more attention to your needs specifically on a day-to-day basis. So that's all I got on that.
Other comments?
Mr. Chair, I generally would sort of disagree with Commissioner Carn's statements pretty much across the board. I do think that, there's definitely, we've identified kind of what the needs are in terms of for us to communicate with each other. I think we're fully all capable of doing that. Clearly some stuff got off track this year for a variety of reasons, but I think we are back on track, as Mayor Williams has indicated. And I don't think we need a go-between. I think it's all up to us individually to work with each other. And I think we're well down that path. And I'm pleased with the tone and tenor of this conversation today. And I think it's a good harbinger for what we got ahead of us.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellis. Anyone else? Anyone else? Well, that's the last item on the agenda today. So any closing comments from anyone?
I do want to let everyone know that Mayor Hurst couldn't make it today. She has a family emergency. She texted me earlier and she sends her regrets, but certainly thanks the county and all of the mayors for participating in this and to keep her family in prayer.
Well, thank you, Mayor Williams.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have something. It was not on the agenda, and I would, at some point in time, like to speak to the city manager concerning the police firing range here in South Fulton. I think I made a couple of calls to you, Dick, and I'm sure you've been busy. But I need to have a conversation as it pertains to the police shooting range.
Yes, sir. I'll call you right back.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any closing comments? All right, hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your...
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. I love you. There ain't nothing you can do about it.
I've tried, and I have not been successful.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Be safe out there, y'all.
All right.
January. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. That was nicely done, Mayor Williams. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's logistical Williams.